Baby, have you ever wondered whatever became of the creator of WKRP in Cincinnati, Hugh Wilson? Well, coming up next, from Out of the Vault, my 2014 conversation with the late, great TV showrunner, right here on Brio TV, the podcast. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Brio, here to talk about the people who make the TV we love. And on this episode, we go back into the vault for an interview I did a decade ago with the creator of one of my favorite TV comedies, WKRP in Cincinnati. That man was Hugh Wilson, who unfortunately left us in 2018 at the age of 74. This conversation is from 2014. When I interviewed Wilson, when Shout Factory released a fantastic box set DVD edition of the entire series. Now, best of all, Shout was able to negotiate a DVD release price for almost all of the music heard on the series. And that was important. You know, the series was set at a top 40 radio station with all these wacky DJs, and reruns of the series had been pulled off the air for years because they just didn't have the rights to rerun music by the Rolling Stones, Paul McCartney, Michael Jackson, Pink Floyd, and many, many others. Shout managed to put them all back into the DVD edition, and as a result, it's really something that if you're a fan of this series, you should look for and collect. Now, the series featured a great cast, including Gordon Jump as station manager Arthur Carlson, Howard Hessman as DJ Dr. Johnny Fever, Lonnie Anderson as receptionist Jennifer Marlowe, Frank Bonner as sales manager Herb Tarlick, Jan Smithers as Bailey Quarters, Tim Reed as DJ Venus Flytrap, Richard Sanders as award-winning news ace Les Nessman, and Gary Sandy as station savior and program manager Andy Travis. Wilson tells how he was in an entirely different line of work, but because he knew some key people working at MTM in the early 70s, he was able to wrangle an interview with studio boss Grant Tinker. Tinker opened the door a crack to the world of television, and Wilson ran in and never looked back. He talks about how the cast all came together, about battles with the network censors, about how the show was taped before a studio audience each week in record time compared to other shows, and what he thinks of more modern TV sitcoms. So here he is from 2014, recorded over an old-fashioned phone line, the late, great Hugh Wilson.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the release of this finally, with all the music and everything. And I watched WKRP. I was a college student during the years it was on the air, and have great fond memories of it. But I can't tell you what a delight it's been to revisit it on DVD. It is very funny. It holds up, and it's always such a great pleasure when that happens. So congratulations on
it. That's terrific. I'm glad to hear you say that. I was generally depressed. We went up, I think, around 2006 or something. Lonnie and Howard, Tim, and I were invited to go on the Today Show to promote a DVD of the first season that was put out by Fox. And, I hadn't even looked at it. And then after the Today Show, we went to a radio station where disc jockeys could call us to talk about it.
Yeah.
And all the calls were, hey, this is a mess.
Really?
I mean, it was just one right after another. It was like anti-promotion, And then, so I said, Jesus, I better have a look. And I only looked at the pieces of one show, and I was so depressed, I just stopped looking at it. Somehow or another, we through a stroke of luck, these people at the Shout Factory, who I got to meet, they sponsored a sort of a retrospective appreciation night at the TV Bill Paley TV Museum out in L.A. And we went out for that, and And the guy, the CEO of Shout said, I used to be in the record business. I think he was with Casablanca or something like that.
Huh.
And he said Fox just didn't go about this right. And so far, I've secured 65% of the rights. I've been able to negotiate them to a price that we can afford, and I'm working on the rest. I dare say there'll be some that we just can't get, but I was so pleased to hear that. That was exciting, because the other thing was just such a disaster.
Well, Shout does a fantastic job of presenting and restoring great shows, and this is another example. I mean, the music's there, but it just all the vitality, and they're very clean, crisp transfers. It looks new.
Oh boy, that's great. The thing that they could never, they didn't have unmixed soundtracks. MTM just must have thrown all that stuff away or something. I don't know, and so there was so little that could be done with it. I don't know how these guys have made it work, but God bless them.
Yeah, no, it cleans up really well, and in fact, it's kind of fun watching the first couple of episodes, because the opening title sequence looks like it was shot by some kid on a Super 8. It's so low tech. It's just shots of Cincinnati, and even the titles are in blue letters and everything. But the shows, the episodes themselves are perfect. So,
well, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask a bit about it. I know that the casting seems so perfect watching it now. Everybody, you can't imagine anybody else playing these characters, but when you went to actually cast it, did it fall into place that easily, or was it more of a challenge to get the right people?
It was, I think it was kind of serendipity. People came in. We saw a lot of people, but when Frank Bonner walked in and started reading for Herb Tarlick, that became a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Thank God, Richard Sanders at Lonnie was somebody who had done just a little bit of work, but I was aware from her from a small part she had played on a Bob Newhart show, I think. So I immediately, but she came in and said, "I don't want to play a dumb blonde," and I said, "Well, read the script. She's not dumb." And I said, "I'd also be very happy to, to sit down with you and work it out to both of our satisfactions." So that was lucky. And then Tim Reed, who came in, he's hardly in the pilot.
Right.
And he, you said, isn't Venus Flytrap a female name? And I said, yeah, but you know what? I don't think so. And I said, it just jumped into my head, and screw it, and screw logic. And I told Tim that it'd be a much better part. And in fact, I had written a second show that I was able to show him, so that worked out. Gary Sandy was the choice of the network, but I was able to cast the rest of the show myself. They only insisted on what they thought was a very big leading part. They didn't seem to guess that what I had in mind was an ensemble thing.
Yeah, is it ever? Everybody is very much a part. And I watched just last night, I was flipping through some episodes, and there's Jennifer's Christmas episode. And you were talking about how much more complex her character really was. It's very interesting. It's an oddly touching episode. You have this spectacularly beautiful woman, and everyone else in the office is worried that she's going to be alone for Christmas. It just was very unique. I really enjoyed that one, and
that's good.
Back in a moment with more From the Vault wisdom from WKRP and Cincinnati's creator, Hugh Wilson.
Round here it's called a varsity blues. Went to a pub, went to a party with a little bit of work you might get a fee. Your books are overdue, the school is gonna sue, and your dad's gonna give you the third degree. You get that aching feeling when the essays due. Round here it's called a varsity blues.
Looking for something new and original to watch this summer? If you've been listening to this podcast, you know by now that Super Channel is packed with movies every single month, but they also have some cool series and documentaries premiering all the time. This summer, for example, check out the Super Channel Fuse original documentary Summer Camp, and that's spelled QAMP. Go camping with a group of LGBTQ plus youth at an idyllic lakeside camp in Alberta. The young campers enjoy the traditional summer camp experience in a safe, affirming environment. Also premiering on Super Channel Fuse this summer is Troppo. Set in the wilds of far north Australia, Troppo follows a disgraced ex-cop, played by Thomas Jane, who is recruited to look into the murder of a brilliant tech pioneer. And remember, Super Channel, an all-Canadian service, is available via most cable providers and streams live and on demand on Roku, Prime Video, and Apple TV+. Now more with WKRP's Hugh Wilson.
Did you grow up in Canada?
I did, yes.
Well, when the show first went on, it was struggling in the ratings in the U.S., but the ratings from Canada were great right from the beginning. And I've never understood that, but I've always been super grateful for it.
I wonder why that was. And do you happen to remember what network it aired on in Canada? If it was CTV or CBC?
I don't. But I would go into these meetings, and I would use our success in Canada as part of my plea to keep us on the air.
Well, one thing, I know in Toronto we were nicely situated to get all the Motown stuff from Detroit, and Top 40 Radio had a very dominant presence in Toronto. There was that world of the disc jockeys. I mean, I don't know if this means anything, but it was pretty easy to grasp and relatable. Chum was a top 40 station here, and their disc jockeys were real personalities, and maybe that had something to do with it, or maybe it was just on the right network.
I don't know. I don't know. I was making a movie a couple of years later after KRP in Toronto, and one of the I'm responsible for the first police academy. I have to take the rap for that. I think it's the only one that's any good. So that's the only one I did. But we shot it in Toronto. And the crew was largely Canadian, and we were talking about KRP, and one of the Canadians said, "I don't know, I thought your cast they all seem to be Canadians to me." I said, "I don't even know what that means, because I can't tell a Canadian from an American, except that you guys don't get mad as quickly."
Most of the characters, certainly Gary Sandy had a very southern lilt. The only one that seems that way to me is Smithers' character, because she was kind of quick to say sorry and excuse me, which is more typical of Canadians, maybe. Yeah,
maybe. When she came in, I had seen her picture a couple of years before on the cover of Newsweek. They did a thing about spring break or something like that, and some guy just took her pictures. She was on the back of a motorcycle in Malibu in a bikini.
Wow.
And I saw that, and it kind of... it was ironed into my brain.
Right.
You know, and then she had started to act some, and when she came in, I recognized her. I thought she, looked like Jean Shrimpton to me, and she was very candidly insecure about her acting.
Right.
And I said, "Oh, I got to have you. You run the show. We'll make it work. Don't worry about a thing." Because I wanted two wonderful females of different types.
Well, yeah, it worked perfectly, and she had that great shy quality, but certainly a beautiful woman.
Gorgeous!
Yeah,
gorgeous. And I think that judging by the fan mail, it all kind of started in Lonnie's direction, and then I started noticing Jan was building a pretty strong following. Requests for autographs and autograph photos.
Not surprised. I think most viewers might have thought that they might actually have had a shot at Jan, but never. never
right.
Lonnie.
Yeah. Lonnie was almost like a superhero or an action figure.
Yes, she certainly was. I wanted to ask you too. Comedy, the old cliche comedy, is hard, but you look at the landscape today in TV in Canada. We've really been struggling to break through with a sitcom. There's been 5 or 6 lately, and they're just not breaking through with audiences. And even in the U.S., aside from Big Bang Theory, in recent years, it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah. I've noticed that.
Well, why do you think that is? What was it about WKRP that connected to audiences that maybe people are struggling with today?
I don't know the answer to that. I will say that the sitcoms that was sort of a golden era there. They were very, very popular.
Yeah.
And I was lucky because I was at MTM. I had been working on Bob Newhart, so I had the production of Grant Tinker and Mary Tyler Moore, and they had great respect for writers because of the success of the Mary's Show and Rhoda and Phyllis and all of that. So, I was kind of a latecomer to that collection. And it was about that time that Hill Street Blues came on, which was a completely different direction for MTM. But I think people liked sitcoms better. What I don't understand is that there seems to HBO and the cables, they want shows that will attract subscribers.
Right.
So the old networks, they just want eyeballs, and I don't know what it is, but we obviously see the different levels of quality and whatnot. I think that I think the networks are just playing it too dumb. I don't get it.
Right. I think you're right.
Because you don't have to have shocking sex or violence to be smart. But they've always. When I used to have trouble with CBS, when I would write a joke and they would say, "Not everybody will get that," and I said, "Yeah, exactly. That's a little present for the people that will get it,
right?
And the people that don't get it, they'll think it's a straight line. So what? They won't get up and leave."
You're so right.
I thought that was so obvious.
Yeah.
But it was, we worry about that. That's, talking about a beer, I think we're at the very beginning, a beer advertiser, and I said, look for the smiling face of Archduke Ferdinand on every bottle. Well, they just kind of went berserk about that. And they said, people don't know about the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. I said, yeah, but there are those.
Right. That's very funny.
And they'll be tickled.
Well, I think that's why people treasured your show, and others that gave those little gifts to audiences. Even if you didn't get them right away. I mean, I remember as a kid watching Rocky and Bullwinkle and not getting half the stuff, but watching it as
it was great. Yeah.
As an adult, it
was. I don't know the resistance to that, but I was lucky, and I was at MTM, and he had a hard time bullying us because Grant would go over and have a little chat with him, and I don't know how he did it. He was a perfectly charming man. That's probably how he did it, and he probably reminded them that 4 of their top 10 hits were from him, but he would come back and say, "Hugh, it's all right. You can do that."
Wow. He's quite a hero to critics who've been around for a while. Still,
a great guy to me.
Good.
One thing they would not put up with is, they knew that Johnny Fever obviously had some sort of drug-related issues. And I would sometimes have him stepping out of a closet, waving his hand as if to clear smoke, and they would jump on that immediately. That was just right out, and I knew they were going to get it, but I would pretend to be all offended, and then they'd give me something else.
Smart.
You know what I mean? It was like negotiations.
Smart. That was great. I love the episode I watched where he's the officers there trying to judge how much alcohol affects him on the air, and he gets better every time. Very funny. Very funny. That's why I love Tim.
And Tim Reed is really good in that, and he's a teetotaler.
Oh, is he really?
That's
funny.
He'll take a glass of wine, and at the end of the evening, it's half full. But I thought he was a wonderful drunk.
Yeah, no, they're both great in that. As is the guy playing the cop. He's pretty funny.
Yeah, that guy was terrific.
Yeah.
And more of that conversation with Hugh Wilson in just a moment. Time once again to speak with Emily Gagne from Hollywood Suite. Emily, what do you got for us this summer?
Well, we've got a little something for everyone, including the exclusive Canadian premiere of The Contestant. I don't know if you've heard of this movie, Bill.
I have heard of it. This is audacious. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's the true story of this Japanese man that was thrown into a reality show without knowing he was being filmed, and he spent a year naked in a room trying to survive on coupons.
Wow. This is it's the real Truman Show without clothing, right?
Absolutely. And this movie goes through the whole process back in the day. This happened in the 90s, but then we also talk to him today and see what he's up to. And it just talks about sort of how corrosive reality TV can be. And it's a movie that's played at a lot of festivals. So if you're looking to see it, it's coming to Hollywood Suite July 1st, and it'll be on demand anytime you want to watch it.
I got to see that. All right. What else do you have for us this summer?
Well, if you're looking for some more traditional movie watching, we have what's called a Revved Up Summer. So every night in July and August at 9 p.m., we have a different high-octane movie featuring planes, trains, automobiles, etc. So we've got all the Fast and the Furious movies, but also we have, movies like Jackie Brown that have car scenes that are maybe not as high-octane, but are still really memorable.
Love Jackie Brown. Well, there it is. Get revved up with Hollywood Suite this summer. Thanks a lot, Emily.
Thanks, Bill.
And we're back.
Well, one thing I relate to, there's a great sense of playfulness as they're performing the show. That seems different than maybe what you get now. I don't know, it's an intangible, but you just get a sense, wow, these folks look like they're having a great time. Was that how it was when you were taping it, or was it,
it would go like this. we'd sit down and read the script on Monday, and then start rehearsing it. And in the beginning, the scripts were usually pretty tight from the very beginning. By the third year, we almost had blank pages. We were so far behind. But fortunately, they all knew that somehow or another it was going to get fixed by Friday.
Yeah.
My main thing was if somebody had a really good joke. This is endemic in the sitcom business. If you have a great joke and you get a laugh with it on Monday, by Wednesday's rehearsal, you're sick of it and you don't trust it anymore. I spent a lot of my time just trying to refresh memories, but I think what happened was doing it in front of a live audience, because we'd shoot the show once without an audience.
Huh.
I found that if you brought in an audience during the day, like around 4 or 5, that audience just would kind of take you down.
Huh.
But if you brought in an evening audience at 7, they were so excited to be there, and of course the overflow, they were made to come at 4, so I just canceled that one. So we'd shoot the show dry, and I would be having to say all the time, energy, and love this, have fun, smile, But boy, when that live audience came in and they started getting the laughs, then the actors started just having so much fun with it.
Oh, yeah, it shows. It's great. And I've been to some of these tapings of the Canadian ones. They've tried to do some 4-camera studio audience ones, and they shoot 2 takes, and this writers, they huddle, and then they come in with a new line for the second one, and it just doesn't translate when you watch it on TV. And I think you're right about
No, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
The reason to shoot the show once without an audience is now you've got everything backed up. If something goes wrong, for instance, like snow not coming in the window, but instead coming from the ceiling, that sort of thing. If something goes wrong, then you just keep going. And of course, the audiences loved it when an actor screwed up his lines, what we call went up. And I like that too, but my policy was that we were shooting that show for that audience, as if nothing else mattered. They came in at 7. We fired through the show, and most of the time, people were back on the street at 8:30.
Wow!
And in between shots, if, for instance, I knew Gordon jump, I did the warm up. I wasn't about to let some comic come in there that didn't know the show.
Wow.
So I was always talking about the show, and if I knew that, for instance, Gordon wasn't in the next scene, I would bring him out to do a 2-hander with me while we reset.
Nice.
And they would ask him questions, and he had his he had his shtick. Everybody had their shtick, and so it was just fun. And we'd hear about Laverne and Shirley shooting until 2:30 in the morning. Of course, the live audience would finally wander out sometime around 11. I never ever. I thought that was just toxic.
Right. Yeah. Well, where was it shot on? At Radford?
Yeah, the first year we were over in Hollywood. It was the first videotape show for
MTM.
MTM, and what happened was we, of course, always done all our shows on film, and I started looking at the cost of licensing music. And everybody, all the wise people came to me and said, well, you can't afford this music. You should do sound-alikes. And I said, if we do sound-alikes, we better just not do this show. That'll just make it so, excuse me, but it'll just make the whole thing bullshit. We've got to use real music.
Yeah.
And then one of the business people at MTM came by and said, hey, Hugh, do you know if you shoot this show on videotape, you can do an after contract instead of another kind of contract and get this music for half the price?
Wow.
That's how we wound up on videotape.
Oh, really interesting.
Yeah, because you remember the shows like on Sundays. They were usually musical variety shows.
Right.
They could buy the rights to songs for like half the price
of
a film show. Yeah.
So you were.
So we went to videotape, and it was suddenly we were kind of offshore. All the MTM shows were at Radford, and then they finally the second year brought us back to Radford, and we were on the same soundstage as Mary Tyler Moore show was. I was deeply honored to be there.
Wow.
By then they had equipped themselves for videotape. Before that, they didn't. They brought in, these big kind of side vans, control rooms that they park outside the sound stages.
Huh. Did you wind up getting music companies or even bands lobbying to get on the show? Did people really?
We did.
Yeah. Wow.
We did.
Huh.
We did. I almost felt like I was the station manager. They were.
That's funny.
If anybody had a stand-up display for that they put in the record stores, they'd mail me one. I was suddenly getting all this promo stuff, and people were calling about certain breaking. We actually broke some songs.
Wow.
On KRP. The way that happened was that there was a writer's strike, and when the strike ended, we were making shows that we'd shoot and they'd be on the air in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So people were pitching records to us, and to Tim and Howard, because I mostly let them pick their own music.
Really? That's amazing.
Yeah. Unless I was using it as part of the story,
right? Yeah.
Or as a joke, or something like that.
Yeah. No, I could. There were a few episodes. There was some of the typical Christmas rocking around the Christmas tree. Johnny Fever hates it and throws it away, and you can see the ones that you used to write. But there was Paul McCartney songs. There was Rolling Stones. They're pretty top names. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, we were able to get them because of that videotape thing. I think, excuse me, I think the music business, as that became harder and harder business, and they found that they could, particularly getting songs for movies, they could jack the prices up like crazy.
But I guess now that kids are kind of stealing music, maybe the price is going down again.
Well, it's like, I'm not making any money on records anymore, so I'm going to get it from, your TV show.
That's true. That's true.
I don't, I'm kind of talking out my ass right now, but I always thought that was, that might have had something to do with it.
But what was, part of the issue that delayed the DVD release then, that you had rights to the music, but for only a certain number of airings, or a certain number of airings or a certain number of years. I don't remember the boilerplate language, but boy, when it ran out, for me, KRP was always on the air somewhere. It was like owning a little oil well. and so I had decided incorrectly that, well, I think I'll move to Virginia and buy a farm. I don't have to work. Wow.
And so I did that, and then not so long after that, the KRP oil well money stopped. But I'm still glad I did what I did. By the way, not a real farm, a pretend farm.
But that's where you live now in Virginia.
I do. I live now right by downtown, just 3 blocks from the University of Virginia.
Very nice.
But at the time, I had a 400-acre farm. But the cows were lawn ornaments, and but my wife is from childhood a complete horse junkie.
Wow.
So that's how I got her to move. She loved L.A. and I didn't. And but this is horse country here, and so that's what. And we also had 4 very little kids, and we pretended we were doing it for them. I was doing it for me.
Well, it's a beautiful part of the country. A smart move.
It is. It's great.
Yeah.
Back in a moment with more From the Vault wisdom from WKRP and Cincinnati's creator, Hugh Wilson. Stream now, pay never. That's the slogan at Pluto TV, the always free ad-supported streaming service that delivers hundreds of live linear channels and thousands of titles on demand. You can watch Big Brother 24/7 on demand on Pluto TV and even access the live feed from inside the Big Brother house if that's your idea of a good time. Looking for more trainable experience? There's a whole kennel full of episodes of The Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan, or even classic episodes of Don Johnson's cop series from the late 90s, Nash Bridges. Remember Cheech Marin in that, huh? There are tons of movies with new titles every month, and don't forget, Pluto is always adding channels. New this month are 2 new Western channels, The Wild Wild West and Classic Movie Westerns. You can watch a whole heap of classic odors, including Gunsmoke, Rawhide with Clint Eastwood, and even The Lone Stranger. And remember, Pluto TV is free and can be easily accessed and streamed across mobile, web, and connected TV devices. Try Pluto TV. It's out of this world. Now more with WKRP's Hugh Wilson.
I want to ask just quickly about how you came to the Bob Newhart show. Was that your first writing credit for television?
Yeah. I had been in Atlanta, and I had been the creative director of an advertising agency, and I had these 2 friends, Tom Patchett and Jay Tarsis,
Wow.
who I had known when they started as a stand-up comedy team. And we had stayed in touch, and I had used them in a lot of radio advertising. When I started out as a copywriter, none of the important people in the agency thought anything about radio. And I thought radio was really cool. I was a big Stan Freberg fan.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, so I started doing funny radio spots, and they won national awards and all that. And I usually use Tom and Jay. So, 1974, I guess, I was in L.A. directing a television commercial, and I spent the weekend at Jay's house and told him I was absolutely miserable and blah, blah, blah. And so he got me a meeting with Grant Tinker, and all I had was my sample reel of commercials, but fortunately they were all funny.
Wow.
So Grant said, well, I don't have any openings, and you're 30 years old, but, I do have an opening for an intern for $150 a week, and I said, I'll take it. And
Smart.
So just getting past those guards, that's at those studios, that's the real victory. Anyhow, once I got in there, Tom and Jay were show running Newhart, and they let me. It was, you know what? Nobody wanted to ask a 30-year-old guy to go get sandwiches, so I just wandered around, and I could sit up in the stands and watch how the Mary Tyler Moore show writers and Jay Sanders, how they did the show. It was like going to comedy college on a full scholarship.
No kidding.
And I went down and watched the Newhart show, and then I said, may I try my hand at writing one, and I did. and they liked it. They changed it a lot, which is typical in that business. The head writers usually wind up really writing the show, but suddenly I suddenly sold like 6 scripts or something, and I was off and running.
Wow. What was there anything you learned specifically from Newhart that helped you later?
I sure did love the actors.
Mm-hmm.
That whole cast, they were such a group of nice people. Newhart was just wonderful, and Suzanne Bouchette was so kind to me, because I went down there and nobody even introduced me, and I sort of was this, who is that guy? So Suzanne and Bob one day just came up to me. I was pouring a cup of coffee, and introduced themselves to me.
Wow.
That's how nice they were. The next year, I got a job as a show writer on a Tony Randall show, and I worked on it for 2 years, and it was never successful. He played a judge.
Right, I remember it.
In Philadelphia. And I learned more from Tony Randall than I learned from any other person.
Wow.
He was absolutely so smart, and he was so smart about script construction. And back in those days, if an actor said, "What's my motivation for doing so-and-so?" the comedy writers would yell out their salary. you know? And I thought, oh, that's clever. And Randall told me, hey, Hugh, that's bullshit. A good writer knows the motivation for everything. You never have an actor enter a scene unless he's got a reason to come in there. And I was thinking, God, this guy's really right. And, this is situation comedy. It's not write a joke followed by another joke comedy. So you got to have characters, and you got to have story. Even if the story is, fairly flimsy, you've got to have it.
Wow.
And I also learned from Tarsus and Patchett, but I would say that Tony Randall was my mentor.
Wow, what a great one to have. And the other show, of course, that I watched every single episode was Frank's Place. What a tremendous show! And it seemed to me a show that was HBO before HBO. Like it probably was.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I think to myself, well, we were just ahead of our time.
Yeah.
There's even some talk of us winning a Peabody Award, which is, of course, the kiss of death in the Nielsen's. I won an Emmy for it, and 5 nominations and stuff like that. But, yeah, that was a case, too, of me. I'd had a successful TV show that was now in syndication. This first stupid little movie I did, it turned out to be a huge hit. Police Academy, and I didn't want to do TV, but Tim, who's one of my best friends, he did, and CBS really wanted me to come back there. And so I started thinking of things that would make me want to come back. Like, hey, I'd like to shoot it movie style, one camera. And, hey, by the way, you know what? I know this is a little late in the game for me to say this, but we're not going to use a laugh track.
Right.
And, stuff like that. And, by the way, one of the reasons that show is not in syndication anymore is that all the damn music, real music I used on the jukebox in there.
Wow. Is that something that Shout Factory might be able to straighten out to get a DVD release?
Well, unfortunately, there are only 22 episodes, but I think they could sell them.
Yeah, so do I. It's one of those...
I think it'd be really popular now. It wasn't then, because we were kind of compared to the Jeffersons, and it just... That wasn't what we were doing.
No, I've interviewed several of the actors and the producers of Treme, the HBO show, and they all reference Frank's Place, as a great inspiration
They did a really nice thing for Reed and I. We got invited down to New Orleans, and the Treme people at HBO had a thing at a venue there, and so many people came. We used 2 auditoriums, and we showed them. We had to use closed circuit. And we showed 2 or 3 episodes of Frank's Place, and then Tim and I answered questions for 2 hours.
Wow!
And that was all paid for by the Treme guys.
Nice, classy. That's great.
Yeah,
good to hear.
Yeah,
Well,
and the only thing that bothered me is at the end I said, "Hey, you guys, I should come down and be one of the writers on your show," and they all kind of laughed and looked the other way. So.
It might have helped. They should have listened to you.
I think so. I think what it needed was a little pepping up. It was, although it's that guy had done The Wire, which I was so blown away with. Before I guess that and Band of Brothers were my favorite all-time TV shows until Breaking Bad came along, and I became hopelessly addicted.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, no, so did a lot of us. But yeah, Treme could have used a little humor and structure. I think it was almost an experiment. It was part of that was really cool, but I can see why it wasn't a big hit.
I myself couldn't get into it, and I'm really interested in New Orleans, and I have great respect for the people that were doing it, but I don't know.
But my memories of Frank Place was almost every week was a whole other movie. Like it just seemed you would focus on one of the characters.
It was like little short stories is what I was trying for. Hey, you know something I think that Frank's Place would work today is I think it'd be fun to binge watch it.
Right. Read it as a book.
You know, I don't think KRP is a binge watch, but I have a feeling Frank's Place is.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You'd want to consume the whole thing. It's like Breaking Bad or Walking Dead or all the ones that people just...
Yeah, and you know, they're only 23 and a half minutes long. And I think, I don't know. I think it's a shame it's still... the BET network bought it for one run, but then moved away from it. I think they really were more doing music at the time, music videos.
Well, what do you think? Just I know I've been on the phone a long time, and thank you for being so generous. But
I'm having a good time. If you haven't guessed that.
Great, fantastic!
It's my favorite subject, too.
Well, it's you should be very proud of it. These days, it seems people make 10 episodes or 13 episodes of shows. Does that make more sense? Do you think than trying for 22, 24?
Yeah, I think that's really good. 24, Jim Brooks told me once that doing a sitcom was like the Greek myth of Sisyphus, is that it? Who would roll a rock up to the hill and then it would roll back down. He said, you're elated on Friday, you just shot a great show, and then you go home on the weekends to become depressed because you're really worried about next week's show. And I always thought, like Faulty Towers, my God, it didn't get any better than that. They just did it. They said, look, we're just going to do this many. But in the U.S., you're a flop if you didn't, do 125 episodes. And to tell you the truth, I really panicked on KRP because I was kind of out of radio stories after about 8 shows, I mean, you do you do go on. But it becomes very frightening, and you're always thinking, I was very discouraged that Frank's Place was canceled, but I didn't have a good argument because the ratings stunk. But there was a part of me that said, good, well, done with that. I mean, we did that. That's probably all that needs to be done.
Amazing.
So I like that short run business.
Yeah, no, I would think it must for creative people. It's the answer.
But now with the internet, I like the HBO series more than I do movies, and my kids will finally say, "Hey, Dad, you have to watch Breaking Bad, or you have to watch Lost, or you have to watch Game of Thrones." And then I find out that I watch them for 4 days, sitting in my pajamas. With, by the time I'm through with it, I need to shave and get a wife.
Well, there you have it, Hugh Wilson in 2014 talking all things WKRP. Since that conversation, as far as I know, no streaming service has picked up Frank's Place, another series that Wilson helped to create. The show ran on CBS from 1987 to 89. I'd be curious to see if it lives up to my memories of the series, which starred Tim Reed and his wife, Daphne Maxwell Reed. Thanks as always to Phil Hong, who deserves a Silver Sow Award for bringing these From the Vault episodes up to date and all together. Thanks as well to BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudra, the Crispy Critters, and Piano Man Stephen Dudley for the music you hear on these episodes. If you liked what you heard on the episode, please pass it on, tell your friends, and leave us a like or a comment wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.
I'm living on the air in Cincinnati, WKRP.